Piet ook een keer mentionen, zo voor mijn online presence wat te verbeteren. Ik denk dat mijn online presence wel nog niet zo... Well done, Dieter, again. Good? Yes. 3, 2, 1. Good evening, everyone. I'm happy to welcome you here. My name is Dimitri, I'm a partner at Made with Love, and this is Flo. Today we're doing our 5th Heartbeats, something that we do for the 10th year of Made with Love. And we've got the live audience here, which is numerous, and also we have a lot of people watching the live stream. Very good, some remote colleagues of ours from Made with Love. So it's a simple concept, we ask 10 questions and he answers, and afterwards we have Q&A, also from the people online. So maybe let's start with you, of course. Tell us a little bit about yourself and what's your background?
Well, my background is that I was born in Bruges, not that far from Ghent, but I live in Brussels, so tonight is in between. By training, I'm a commercial engineer with a little bit of computer science. And, yeah, I studied in there, but that was in the late 90s. Interesting to see that we've lived through an AI winter since, because it was already very hot back in the day. Artificial intelligence, you could study it since the 70s, 80s, 90s, 2000s, and now it's hot again. So I think we should prepare for a winter coming when the phase of disillusionment kicks in again. But most of all, I think I can call myself an internet entrepreneur. I started my first, I've been building websites since 1995, but I started my first startup in 98. So when I was at the bar earlier on during Peterson, people were telling me that they weren't doing much in those days related to computers.
I was 9 years in, so I can relate.
So yeah, I've been around for a while, and my current startup is Data.be, is the one where I spent most of my time on. As a spin out of Data.be, we created Lex.be, which is a tool for lawyers and legal professionals to find law and case law in Belgium. And my first startup was Canvas.be, which is a platform to find good contractors for home improvement, decoration, finding a contractor for a plumber, electrician, an architect, all those things. So that was as many internet projects are born, you have a problem, you want to fix it. And so I was renovating my house, I didn't find good contractors, I was like, okay, how come there isn't a platform about that yet? And that's how the first one was born.
The internet is a solution.
Well, it's not a solution to all problems. But one of the interesting things to notice, this was in 99, so that was another dot-com boom, I would say, and today's internet startups are hot again. Again, these things are phases, and back then, with dot-com boom, there was a lot of money looking for what looked to be the new gold back in the day, and today data is a new oil. Back then, internet startups were the new gold rush, and so there was a lot of capital flowing to young startups, and I was one of those 27-year-old entrepreneurs that I'm shameless to say got €4 million and burned most of it on, looking back, stupid investments, very expensive lessons I learned there. And I managed to buy the company back from the VC, which is not happening very often, because one of the things to know when you take VC money is a little bit like, some people say it's opium, other people say it's another substance that you shouldn't take to make you run faster, but it definitely is an accelerator, but it can also kill a company. And I see too many startups taking money without knowing what they're going to use it for. So my recent startups are what I refer to as lean startups, which means we didn't take any external capital. We built it with, I would say, it was €20,000 of starting capital, Belgian BVBA, and limited liability company, and then grew organically, which is a whole different beast of taking startup money from a VC, because then you dilute as a shareholder. You can go very fast, but you need to know where you're moving. And so, as a first-time entrepreneur, you need to think twice before you take VC money. Make sure that you know why you take money from a certain VC, where they really want to go. Because one of the things you learn is that a VC fund has a certain timeline they're set up for. And the reason we managed to buy back with several of the founders our own startup was that we entered late in this fund. And so one of the other investments, they put in, from what I recall, 1 million and they got back 30 million. The fund wanted to close down to reimburse the profits to their shareholders. And so we were one of the companies that wasn't going bankrupt, it wasn't going stellar. And so they looked for external investors. And this was at a time when nobody wanted to touch startups. Like this was a thing of the past. It was never going to work. This whole internet thing was gonna go by, and there were very few successes in Europe. And so they didn't find other investors to take the shares. And so we managed to buy it back at a discount.
And in retrospect, was that a good thing?
Well, it was a good thing in the sense that the company survived and grew. And today it's a 2.5 million annual turnover. There's about 20 people working there, many of those people working for a long time. So it gives me a lot of pride to look back, but I'm no longer operationally involved there. So I'm very grateful to the people running it and growing it still on a day-to-day basis. My co-founder there, Ingmar, was doing a brilliant job there, and the whole team. And so it's good in the sense it survived, but it's bad in the sense for myself that I didn't close the project. And so I find myself in this weird situation where I have more than one startup, and sometimes have a hard time focusing. So that's one of my major struggles in life.
Just to make it clear, the company that you bought back was Data.be?
No, that was Casius.
Okay.
And in Casius, this is the platform for the contractors. We had an issue to keep the cowboys. As you know, in construction, there's many people who do not always have the best intent, and there's lots of those cowboy stories of people getting ripped off by a bad contractor. And to keep them out, we needed a tool to filter who are the good ones, who are the ones going bankrupt with your down payment. And so we scraped the Belgian State Gazette, Belgisch Staatsblad, Moniteur Belge, to find the links between the rough elements going bankrupt, but they usually start at the same address or with the same partner or under the same name, and so you can have a social graph and avoid those people. And out of that tool, in a startup weekend, I pitched the idea, and my co-founder, Eric Rodriguez, in Data.be, he thought it was a good idea too. There was a whole team of people around that. The way it became a company is that we were 10 people in the startup weekend to start working on a prototype. And after 1 year of working evenings and weekends, it became clear who believed in it and who went for other opportunities. And some of the one of the last ones that remained to almost co-found with us, he was the 13th employee of Instagram. So he's working at Silicon Valley still today as one of the core team of Instagram. So yeah, I think we had a lot of talent on board, but it's always very hard when you start to make sure, will I give up my job for this and will I fully involve myself in this project? And so that's
tough decisions to make.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, that's cool. I think most people here know Data.be and Lex.be.
I would be very grateful, very honoring. Thanks.
The platform I always use as well.
Okay.
There you work with government data. You're also a founder of OKFN or a partner in OKFN.
So it's Open Knowledge Belgium today. It's part of the umbrella organization Open Knowledge International.
Yeah. Exactly. I started at Open Summer of Code.
Yeah.
Some people might know it here. Now it's pretty big. So
I'll let you pitch it. What does it do?
Open Summer of Code started as a student organization where they gave students the opportunity to work on projects involving government data. And then they got some sponsors. In the beginning it was very small. We were just 7 students. And then now it's, I think,
76 this year. It really went stellar. We have
crazy sponsors, so it's a very cool concept.
It's being adopted in other countries. In Spain this summer, in parallel with the one we ran from Brussels with Belgian students, there was a whole team setting up one there. So yeah, it's going international.
So open data is big. I think it's also a hot topic.
Yeah. Maybe use this as an opportunity. If you know how to code or want to get into open data projects and you're still a student, join up the Open Summer of Code.
Or as a mentor, because there is a lot.
And we're always looking for great mentors too.
Exactly.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, but what was your experience back then working with open data, and how has it changed now?
So I'm a big believer and I hope defender of open data, and it's a bit of a weird way the way I rolled in it, because it's because of inefficient government websites where the information is scattered around Belgian State Gazette, the Crossroads database for company information, the balance sheets, which we find at the National Bank of Belgium. And so the information is online, and Belgium is surprisingly open. Few people know that we are amongst the most open business data disclosing countries in Europe. Many other countries, if you even go to the Netherlands, It's KVK. They have a monopoly. They make 200 million euro a year by selling the company data. In Belgium, it's free.
Didn't know that.
Yeah?
Okay.
So we should not always say some things are very good here. It's a pity. So the reason we stepped in with Data.be is to consolidate 3 sources and to offer a full text search engine, so people could search inside millions of documents published at the Belgian State Gazette. And we do entity recognition and enrichment. That's getting into the nitty-gritty details of our product. And something worth noting is that, Made with Love is one of our first customers, and it's actually the most long-standing active customer. So big thanks for sticking with us on the journey. As you often see, innovative companies like to work with other innovative companies, and you inspire each other. And so it's been a fun.
That's actually the anecdote I was going to put in later.
Oh,
Andreas,
sorry,
Andreas was.
I didn't prepare this
no
properly.
Problem.
So
Andreas is actually the biggest fan and one of the first customers, or the first customer from of that.
Andreas, big thanks when you. I know you're in Zurich, but our gratitude goes all the way up there.
Okay, so open that, and has there been a lot of improvement on it?
Yeah.
Have you been able with OKFN, for example, to push the boundaries there?
Well, I definitely have the feeling. So it's if you look at the way Open Knowledge was born, it was actually a student project. Jiri Tite, you know him too,
yes.
And again, he started a website where he scraped the Belgian train tables, and he got a cease and desist letter from the national train company saying, your data belong to us, and it's our data. You can't not allowed to share this with anybody. Database copyright. Yeah? And so he contested that and said, no, you, together with a lawyer, maybe you should reconsider, because these data are the byproduct of your core service, which is a public service, and so we consider this not to be your data, but the public good. And it's very funny, because 2 years ago at our annual conference, called Open Belgium, we had the NMBS on stage, and they said, we now have an open data policy. So in a few years' time, they went from our data, we're the only ones that should be allowed to use it, to, wow, if we open this for the greater good, other people will incorporate it in their apps, solutions. They will sell, and we will sell more train tickets. And it's a nice metaphor for the greater good that you can create by opening up your data. And so this was it's a public company even in this case, thinking they had to close it, and they publicly acknowledged we were wrong then. And we adapted that, and they have an open data policy now.
And if you can do that with the NMBS, that kind of change, so that's something really big.
Yeah. And so yes, things change. They often change slowly, because a lot of people are afraid of opening their data sets, because no data set is perfect, because it's never at some point finished, and so everybody knows there are some issues in a data set. And so if you're a government representative and you work in some authority or department, then you're very much afraid that you're going to open something that will backlash, like, hey, how come we have this shitty data and we have all these complaints? Whereas we say, no, that's perfectly okay. By opening up, you can involve with your end users and the audience, and they will report back to you. And that's one of the things we strive for, to have a feedback loop. We say, hey, I found these outdated data elements, and this should be the correct answer. And that way, in a very cost-efficient way, we can improve the quality of the data.
It's basically free Q&A, quality assurance of your data, so that's win-win.
It's another way to put it, but it's a hard battle to convince everybody of that. And so we have the law on our side. There's a European directive. There's the Flemish, the Brussels, the Walloon region have all adopted open data policies, and the federal level is almost ready to vote it too, due to some technicalities. They can't publish the law yet, but it's the principles are fully in line with the PSI directive.
Very cool. So making progress.
Yeah.
Data.be has been going on for quite some time already.
Yeah,
How long
we
has
incorporated in 2012, so 6 years.
6 years. Anecdote, I can scratch that. We had that already. Is Data.be profitable at the moment?
Yes, it has always, it's profitable, but not only because of the products we do, but because as many lean startups, you do services on the side of the product. Because the services give you direct access with your end customers, you can improve the famous product market fits, because you have direct, and you get paid to be at your customer website. In our case, we're what is today called a fintech, a company providing services to the financial industry. That's this part of fintech we're in. There's also fintechs trying to disrupt like the B2C part of banking or insurance, but we're more into the providing services B2B to the banks to optimize the way they manage their business customers. So we have many banks on our customer list, and so we do services to integrate our data feeds into these banks, and that's the combination of our APIs and data flows and the services make that we're profitable.
Okay. Very cool.
And that's maybe a good lesson too. The open data as such are not valuable. It is the fact that you have clean, the best cleaned, enriched real-time data that you combine with something. Yeah. So often the value of the open data is not the set as such. It's the combination of the set with something else. If you take the example of real-time, which is the app, the student app that is in one of the working projects of open knowledge. They now added a feature where you can report how busy your train is. So this means that out of the NMBS, out of the Transport Authority's instance, which is open data, open source project, has more information about how filled the train is. And this is the type of feedback loops that are very interesting. So if you onboard a train now, and you can do all sorts of predictive analytics with that, of course, and say, like, okay, on average, this train will be, you'll have to stand up, or and this is going to be a really sweet ride, and you'll have the whole coupe to yourself, and you can work in full concentration without a headset.
If I recall correctly, it also spawned in an open summer of
absolutely. Already twice that one. So the iterations every summer it gets better, and through the year too, of course. But the big jumps are made with the help of the summer students.
So you've mentioned a couple of your startups. I don't know if they're still startups but so you deal with teams behind them as well. How big are the teams that we're dealing with here?
I would say surprisingly small. So about 6 people, and we have some subcontractors or linked companies where we when there's a need, we ask somebody to help and develop it. So that's often when people ask, they're like, what, only 6 people and you build this huge, the data we deliver are of the same origin and the same quality as the commercial data brokers. That's like the Bureau van Dijk, the Gradens, the Dun & Bradstreets for Belgium, and it's like the same sets. The only thing we do not collect is payment information. Yeah, so that's apart from that, we have the same data, the same scoring models, the same. So it's very interesting that you have these legacy organizations, the incumbents, and that a small startup can really disrupt that and create an open data feed with those same data sets.
Yeah, okay.
Of course, they're not all open. Some of the feeds we sell, we structure information, and so we repackage, we enrich, and we sell the enriched format. So that's the revenue model we found between the openness and finding a revenue model.
Yeah, extra services, I guess.
Yeah.
Do these teams, are they all in Belgium employees, or do you have remote teams as well?
From a legal perspective, everybody's on the Belgium payroll, but we do have remote workers, and we will have more in the future, because one of our team members has announced that he will work in Asia for a year, and so we're okay and open with that. So he will relocate as of January to some country, another continent.
He doesn't know yet where, so
it's going to be a travel trip. So to all the millennials out there, enjoy it while you don't have children, that you can travel in the world without a plan in November to know where you'll be in January. But so very much admire that and want to help facilitate that sort of travel. So and we have another team member who, for reasons of love, is a lot in Poland. So he's working a lot from there, and we have another team member who's working from home a lot. So a lot via Slack and text messaging. So we're used to that.
It's perfect. We always ask that question because we have part of our company also remote.
Okay.
So we think as well.
And what's your main communication channel you're using?
We use Slack, and we try to do weekly video calls as well. Okay. And when they team up, they have the tools they need, video calls to do so.
Very similar setup.
And if you want to find good developers, or you have a tech-savvy team, those needs
are
hard to fill.
We're blessed with a really a tech-savvy team. We're almost all engineers, and we don't have a lot of marketing or it's like that's what the hats I try to combine, and my right hand Brecht is managing part of that too. So that's we're cool. We keep that small.
You mentioned the investments already a bit when you introduced yourself, and you talked about how it was back then.
Yeah.
How did you see investments evolve? 'Cause I kind of feel with you that nowadays, or maybe back in the days, I was in 2 startups as well. They got VC money, and actually then it kind of went wrong with them because they tried to invest too fast and in the wrong things because they didn't have a clear path. So I myself feel that we've moved a bit past that and we're doing it a bit better now. What do you think about that, and how do we deal with investments now?
To be honest, in '99, and I may be summarizing too much, but we were 5 founders. Never start a company with 5 founders. This is sound advice. It's too many chiefs and two little Indians to use another metaphor. But so that part didn't work out well. But we were 5 founders that all had like engineering and business degrees. We all came from, back then, a consulting background, so not very diverse. We basically had built a spreadsheet and a business, and like a very elaborate business plan. There were no business model canvases back then. So the VC, you came with this huge plan, and the summary of that huge plan was like, we're gonna take part of the European construction industry, which is worth trillions, and we're gonna take this little percentage of it, so it's like the 1%, promise, like we will take this percentage of that market, and so we'll be very, very profitable with this type of team. And so back then you could sell that. I doubted that you can still sell that today to investors. But I'm always amazed. Like I see WeWork, it's a co-working firm. They just got 3 billion.
Yes.
I mean, crazy. So I'm like, okay, there's a lot of capital looking for return. And so I keep being amazed about some things, some people raising money at crazy valuation, which I think are not justified. And in a certain way, they morph reality for the others. Because if you are a hardworking startup trying to do something with 1 or 2, I would say, co-workings, and then you have this behemoth coming in with like, no, literally billions, and they just can snap up whatever is around there, and then, as you said, it's not always the best investments. So when it's about co-working, it's about communities. I don't see how you're going to buy a community. That's something that has to grow. People have to have a sort of mutual respect. So I think if the one side of that equation is like throwing money, you're going to attract a certain type of community, but probably not the one I would want to be in. But,
okay, you're also actively involved in some co-workings here.
So
which are
Beta Cowork is one that we actually started our company in that one, and it gave us a lot of value. Apart from the pleasure of being there and seeing it grow, since we're gonna next Monday we celebrate the 8th year of that one. But so the founder, Ramon Suarez, who started that one and wrote a book about it. So another recommendation if you want to get into co-working, read his book. As you often see with someone who starts a company, at a certain time it wears out, and so he lost the drive and the pleasure he used to have, and so he wanted to either discontinue or find somebody to continue it for him. And so we found an agreement I'm very happy about, and that the co-working is still there. But it gave us a lot because we found our first front-end developer back then. Now he does a lot more than front-end. Just at a lunch table, like we're looking for, and somebody stood up and like, I know one. Okay, puff. That's how we found it. We found one of our first customers there, another startup that was working in the same co-working space. So in a very natural way, over lunch, you can have a coffee, you discuss something, and then without complex procurement procedures, you just start to work together. So we both found customers, we found suppliers, we found colleagues. It brought really, I really believe in this as one of the working forms for the future. It's a great way to start your company without big overhead costs. Then at some point when you reach a certain size and you don't have large remote teams, you might want to move to your own office to create more of like an office culture. And then some people combine both. It's a tough mixer. You can go from one to the other. We might move back. Right now we're in a closed office. We're going to move back to the co-working formula to combine with remote working. So it's an ongoing thing. You know, in startups, nothing is cast in stone. So we try to do that.
Do you still work a lot from co-work then?
Yes, I do. Yeah.
It's an interesting move, moving from an.
I'm gonna be working a lot there again. So
actually, we're doing the same here. We're gonna move to co-work probably. Okay. Combination with remote is always a difficult balance.
And it's gonna be in Ghent and Leuven, or you found one in each?
We were gonna find one here in Ghent probably. So we don't know which one yet, but we're on the lookout.
I'm sure they're all looking, and you're on their prospect list tomorrow morning. You're going to have a lot of calls. Like,
good. Maybe a little bit back to the history. Yeah. You have a lot of experience in the startup world. It's maybe a cliche question, but in the recruitment, we also ask that a lot. Like, what is your biggest accomplishment or your craziest experiences or anecdotes? What did you? What are significant moments you can remember in your startup history?
When you're young and you raise the first time, you think, "Wow, we pulled it off." we have like I said I was 27, your first million, and it's like this amount is huge. I just bought my house. Yeah, it's like you can almost not get your head around it. Like, how are we ever gonna spend this? Yeah, and then there's a radio campaign that comes by, and it's like. It goes very quick. And there's a marketing campaign. But you also do stupid stuff. Some of them we didn't execute, but for example, our first office then was next to the E40 from Brussels to Ghent. And we had all this money on the bank account that was not going away that quickly. We were like, we should really make impact. And there was a real plan we had it drawn out of building this structure next to the E40 with our logo on it, Casius.com. I still have the plans to remind me of the stupid thing you do when you have too much money. Luckily, we didn't spend it on that because we left the office like a few years later. Yeah, but so it's one of those things that you see happening all the time with startups that just raised. I remember back then I was visiting New York, and there was a startup we were called Beans, and so they had ordered a marble bean as a corporate board table, and they were flying it in with one of those helicopters into an office building, and you go like. Whoa! What an insane move, yeah. What a waste of money, and you start to feel sorry because there's so many problems in the world you can solve with money, and then this money just goes to waste because some vanity CEO or marketing officer wants to have a marble bean in the boardroom. Yeah, and so we can laugh with it here, but it's very sad when you say. And so with hindsight, I would say. You often don't spend the money as well as you should because it is not your money anymore. You must know that after two rounds to an area of that size, you no longer control the company. Yeah, there's some exceptions like Zuckerberg still has 60% of the voting rights of a company that had a lot of capital in there, but most mortals will not pull that off. You will not remain in the driver's seat at the board level of your startup once you've done 2-3 rounds, and you're in a minority vote with all the founders, and so. It's no longer your company, and I didn't think about that when we took the first million. And so the money goes quicker than you think, and you had this huge hockey stick in your business plan, like when there's a camera, I should draw it that way, but the hockey stick didn't happen, yeah? And so, we need to invest more in technology, more in marketing, more countries. And so we were opening offices in France, people in the UK, in Spain, in the Netherlands, before we could walk. That's something I see happening a lot with startups. Like you have this huge pressure to grow at all costs, and nobody takes a step back and say, okay, but at what cost? And what do we really want to accomplish? And so time is against you once you've taken on this doping, that's how you can call it, and you have to run now, and you have to run very quickly.
They expect it from you as well, the investors.
And they expect it. And so, second thing is the media loves these stories. Young people, they just raised another crazy amount. The only thing it means is that you managed to convince people at the other side of the money table that you have a good, valuable idea. Nothing else. That's why I like the lean startup idea so much. Your idea is validated by your customers and not by the investor. Yeah? But again, I often doubt, should I have taken VC money in data to grow quicker? And so it's a choice at some point. It's like, whose money will you take, for what purpose? And so far we haven't taken that because we're happy about the destiny we're going. We still think that the biggest growth is ahead of us. Yeah, so. But it's a constant, it's something you have to discuss every once in a while. With my business partner, we discuss about okay, where do we stand now? What happened over the last few months? Are we happy? Should we grow faster? Are we still looking for product market fit in a certain niche industry? Should we invest in the software as a service? Should we invest in the APIs? Should we invest in the custom products for banks? There's so many choices to be made, and we're good at each of them. But you have to focus, and that's, as I said, that's the hard part. When you have a bit of traction everywhere and you make money in one, you usually focus where the money is.
Yeah.
So
I guess we can conclude: spend your money wisely. I guess that's
an old adagem. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
true. But it should not be forgotten. And be wise whose money you take.
Yeah.
That's another thing to keep in mind. I do a little bit of angel investments, and I invested in a startup that you said tonight the pizzas were delivered with the Deliveroo. That this one was Take It Easy. They took a lot. I think they raised over 11 million. We were in the first angel round, I would say, and they were killed. And one of the reasons they were killed is that their investor didn't follow. Their main lead investor didn't follow up in the next round, and that's like it kills you in the market if your investor is no longer chipping in when you want to grow because they have invested in a competitor in another country. Then basically your VC is killing you.
Yeah.
And so make sure that you choose the right people and that they also bring real value, not just money.
Yeah.
Just make sure that they add it. Like if you do SaaS,
They need
go
to have
to
SaaS knowledge, of
a
course.
VC that knows about software as a service. If you're gonna go in B2C, make sure you know B2C,
Exactly.
B2B, and so on. So, and that they can bring you more than just money. I think that's another. If you take the doping, make sure you take it from experts.
Can't say it better than that. Very cool. Something totally different.
Yeah.
Yannick, he always sends an email before you come, and then he asks, okay, what are some interesting subjects that you want to talk about? And then in there was, I know a lot of things, I think, and in there was algo ethics, and I didn't know what it was. So maybe first, what is algo ethics? Well, I looked it up, of course, but for the people here.
So there's a lot of discussion about ethics and algorithms and how we as humans should take a stance there. And it surprises me there's so little public discussion about it. It's more now, but in the general public there's none. And we have all these tools that are invading our lives, from voice interfaces through these little trackers we all carry around that detect who's here in this room together, in which position, who's talking. I mean, they do so much. They know where I'm going afterwards. I get when I pick it up, it might think, oh, you're going to a car because it recognizes, and your next meeting is there. So there's a lot of stuff happening, and we're not discussing the ethics around them. And so one of the things with Lex.be, which is a startup in law, we get asked this question a lot because there's bias. As soon as you have an algorithm, there is bias in there. And so the whole concept of algorithmic amplification that we've seen happening on social networks, whether it's Twitter or Facebook, these things have happened under our eyes, and it took a long time for everybody to, Cambridge Analytica, you all know about the scandal. It took a lot of time before we all realized what has happened there. And we're still discussing to which part was this influencing humans in their votes. So democracy is suffering because of a lack of understanding of what this algorithmic amplification does. And so this is just about something very basic. If I post something controversial, it will get more likes and more views, and it gets amplified, and so extreme views get extreme attention, and the middle ground. And so our politics at this point in time are going there. So that's one part of the ethical discussion, like how should we prevent this? Why do we allow these platforms to amplify this? Why do we think we have a neutral feed, whereas everything about it is doctored? Everything is engineered, so we click, so we stick, so that we keep the attention, that we interact. So that's one part. The other part about the discussion often comes up, and I've seen your slide. I see the trolley on. I'll show it to the camera. This is a tram, and this is maybe quickly explain the trolley.
Yeah, it's the famous trolley problem.
It's something in philosophy and ethics that has been used since early 1900s, I believe. I haven't researched it, so but the idea is that you are standing here, and there's a trolley with a loose brake or something is wrong. It can't stop, and there's 5 people laying on the track there, and one day, if you do nothing, the 5 people will die. If you intervene by changing the levy and the direction of the tram that way, only one person will die. So what will you do? Yeah. The reason it's become very actual now is that it's a very extreme and hypothetical example, because you will have a very short amount of time to make a decision, and it's very unlikely it will happen to any of us to stand in such a situation. But as many of you in the room are designing software and algorithms, it is extremely crucial, because everything we design has a wanted outcome. And so however you design your system, you do intervene. Yeah? And so there is no optical answer. It's how you
I was going to
optimize.
ask him for the solution to the problem, but unfortunately.
Well, it's a ethical. So
Yeah.
do you optimize the number of that, and you make? So some people say no, I do not intervene. That I'm not guilty to anything. Yeah. And so the question is, when you intervene, what are you optimizing? And so make it so many people say, okay, if I optimize one that, that's logical. Okay, what if this is your child? Yeah, and so you can have, and there's like dozens of.
It doesn't end. Yeah.
It doesn't end, and it's a very interesting thought experiment. It's a very good example of the ethical discussions that we should be discussing today, like a self-driving car.
Yeah.
So I'm buying it from a car manufacturer. Yeah, they're taking my money. So should I have the option to have the survival mode level choice? So this is the survival mode level. I pay more for the option to optimize my survival rate compared to the bystanders. These things are out there. We didn't have the discussion. So you say, oh, is that ethical? Well, it depends. Here it's very clear. It's the person paying that's probably going to. If you look at the Volkswagen Group, they doctored the software to detect whether it was being tested. If they did that, how do you trust companies when there is a business interest to not doctor the outcome? Because they're selling to car drivers, not to bystanders. So their interest is very clear. And we're not having the discussion enough. And this is this speaks to itself. In the self-driving car, whether it has to choose to crash into a wall or a group of school children to make it really like, is this your child? It's those are the choices you can discuss, and it's clear where you go with that. But it's happening like in all the software we build, there's a bias. And sometimes we are not even realizing it ourselves.
We're not aware of it.
We're not aware of it, yeah. So this is I like the trolley discussion because it's a good way to start thinking. And especially if there's developers in the room, but not just developers. And like if you look in legal systems, if you make anything predictive, so you're looking at the past. And so if there was any bias in the past decision, you will just amplify it. Just like those extremes get amplified on social networks, you'll do the same thing with a certain legal decision. So it will always be based on what happened in the past. So if there's new political decisions or a new insight or the society evolves, we will just amplify the past and not take those new insights into consideration.
Yeah, so definitely something to think about when you're going to bed tonight. The trolley problem, look it up.
Try to solve it.
Yeah, try to solve it
and make it harder for yourself. There's
something else. You're involved in fintech.
Yeah.
The most relevant question I could ask there is, what do you think about cryptocurrencies?
That's the one part where I don't feel very comfortable because I was
already thinking you can talk with everyone about every subject. You talked before, we did it about avalanches, and now I finally got a question you're not.
No, I can talk about it, but first of all, I had my finger on the mouse to buy bitcoins like when there were it was $11. Yeah, so it was probably a very bad decision not to buy a lot of them back then. So, but I didn't understand enough of it, and I thought it was a bit of a Ponzi scheme already back then. And so I liked the so I read white papers about it, and I was trying to understand what they were going for. I didn't understand enough the cryptography, so I'm honest. I didn't understand the cryptography enough to feel comfortable about going full in on cryptocurrencies. But a lot of my friends back then who did buy and who sold, some of them sold at 20. Someone sold at 80, someone sold at 800. I don't know anybody who sold at 15,000. Yeah, so they all have I made some money and I didn't make it. So the insane thing is the inefficiency of the power usage right now. Yeah. So I think it probably became ethically unexplainable why you would still use that version of cryptocurrencies now, because it's not justifiable that you need so much energy compared to the value it has today. So that's one thing. And then at the global level, we do have an issue with how we manage our resources and our energy-related resources. So I think there is a real issue to address there. The newer cryptocurrencies and blockchain, because I do believe that the blockchain will bring something. It's like that internet in '99 that was going to change the world. It didn't happen straight away.
No, it needs some time,
I think we will seek solutions, but many of the applications that are being pitched to me as an entrepreneur, and I made this horrible mistake of putting angel investor on my LinkedIn, and you get all these ICOs pitching to you. And they also like, we are not a scam. So imagine nowadays, in the beginning, but now it's like, we are not a scam, we're different from the other, like you go like with your, because the reputation of all these initial coin offerings is so bad and they're over that now their pitch literally starts with like, we are not as bad as the others, and there's a real collateral behind our ledger, or a real valuable item that is that is transferable or is backing up the cryptocurrency that we're launching, a service, anything behind it. So yeah, I'm positive about the blockchain technology. I'm very hesitant about the cryptocurrency itself. And what you see happening is that states are stepping down because it is a threat to
especially
the
because
fiat money
of all the scams and the people.
Yeah, but it's on the same hand, it's weird because if you look at what the European Central Bank and Draghi did with the amount of money, they opened it's helicopter money, and a large part of that helicopter money is looking for return, and so we must not forget that a lot of that, that money doesn't get created out of the void. It goes to funds and funds of funds, and some of that money trickles down to the internet economy and to startups. And so that's why you get we were getting 3 billion. Well, this is SoftBank, so it's a bad example, but many startups get money through those funds of funds, and many VCs get part of their funding through the European Investment Bank, which is part of this very open money creation policy that we've had. And so I'm not well, it looks like a recipe for disaster. The combination of creating so much fiat money and then having cryptocurrencies, and all this money is looking for return. Yeah. And everybody has short-term in mind and very little long-term objectives there. So yeah,
I think there's going to be a lot of, how would I say it, a lot of ICOs and cryptocurrency firms just going to go bankrupt, I guess, and all the bad ones.
That has already happened and is happening at a huge rate. If you look at the ICO, just Google it. You find amazing graphs of who got how much and how many of them are really alive and how much money is gone. Yeah. Nobody knows where it has gone to, and most of those projects are dead, basically. So,
but I do also believe in technology, and that's how we get through, hopefully, the good parts of that technology. So
and the thing of distributing a ledger and use cryptography and computational methods to validate a transaction is a very valid idea, but many of the blockchain ideas can just be solved by having a decent database.
Exactly.
And you back it up with a few nodes, and then so I'm always the typical thing when trust is involved and something that needs to be validated. That's like the sample, like the bookcase to use the blockchain. Yeah. But then if you look in practice, technology,
is it really needed? Yeah.
Is it really needed? And secondly, the technology is still maturing. It's getting better. Yeah. You can do a lot more transactions today on the blockchain than you could a year and 10 years ago. And so part of this energy issue will solve itself through better technology and better use of technology. But so yeah, I don't hold and never held any cryptocurrencies. And so I'm a bad person to ask how I think about that. So I stick to what I understand and what I can see and feel.
The technology part is the blockchain part is the most important part. Yeah. I agree on that. So, and then the typical question, the last question for us is, because we're 10 years made with love, how did the world change for you? What were the biggest changes for you in the past 10 years?
Wow.
And then maybe I'll give you the follow-up question already. Well, where do you think the world will be in 10 years?
Okay, so I was very positive 10 years ago.
And now you're
and I'm a
negative.
No, I'm not. No, because in my case the glass is always and the bottle is always half full. So I'm one of those people. Even I'll drink to that. Cheers. But the reason I'm a bit dubious now is that I deal with a lot of data, and of course data has come under a lot of scrutiny with GDPR and privacy and. If I look at what happened with Facebook, which is basically the large success of the last decade, it was started in 2004, but if you look at the real hockey stick and the importance they had on the societal impact, I've never been on there because I thought it's a rotten company from the start. When the CEO calls the users dumb fucks, at the beginning you probably shouldn't trust them with your data. But that's again, I don't hold cryptocurrencies. I've never been on Facebook, so I must be a very lousy internet entrepreneur, right? I missed two big things. But those are choices you make, and so people have chosen largely to share all their personal data on there, knowingly. And so you have this very weird situation where we now see the negative fallout of that. But the backlash isn't that big yet to me. If you look, I mean, it's mind-boggling if you see what happened with Cambridge Analytica. And if you see what technology can do now, I mean, we could have this sign language. I do link, and I say New York Times. The article, I think, is called Delay, Deny, and Evade, or something like that. Or it's an article. Now the voice engine has to start computing all that, and it's deflect, I think. So it's delay, deny, deflect. This was a strategy that was documented in an article on the New York Times today on how Facebook tackles the whole
data breaches,
the data breach, and in particular the fallout of the Cambridge Analytica scandal. And so if a company does that, it is so powerful, and that you see that it can influence a democracy, and that despite all that, hundreds of millions, I mean billions of people stay on that platform. That's the part that makes my glass and my bottle half full. Yeah. So I'm like, okay, what do we need for? Because those are choices we make. Those are choices as a consumer, as a technology consumer, that each of us makes every day. And I must admit, I've never been in Facebook, but when they bought WhatsApp, I was dragged in to this.
You didn't have a choice anymore.
Because I didn't have a choice, and so the choice can sometimes become very hard once you start relying on it. Because it's easy, it works. It was used for my son's football club, and you had a contact with the parents, and where's the match, and at what time, and so very convenient to have like the parents of about 20 young children communicate over this free platform, which was WhatsApp. And then it gets sold, and you get sucked into this company where you vote to yourself, I will never participate in anything belonging to Mark Zuckerberg empire. Yeah, and so we're all very, very pragmatic. Because I didn't delete those groups and I didn't delete the app. And so that's for many people, once you're in such a platform, and I have nothing against, I mean, you'll see I'm on Twitter with my first name too, so I share a lot of information. It's not about not sharing or not being on social media, it's everybody's convenience. And so I'm very much, I have very mixed feelings about how myself and many other people treat and react to what we know, what's happening with technology. And as said, it's impacting our ways in our lives in such a. It's getting under our skin, and we sometimes. And I think I'm among the people that are in the front runners seats of knowing and seeing what's happening in all these new buzzwords industries. And I do have the feeling that we're going very, very fast now, and that there's some point, and maybe I become more risk averse or conservative, growing older. Maybe humans should step in a little bit more and say, okay, about this algorithm taking that decision, we should have more human control, or about this doing that. But so it's, I'm very optimistic about technology solving a lot of problems, but I'm pessimistic if I see how, from an ethical perspective, we as consumers make easy choices, and we're very pragmatic. And so some of the things we ethically think we shouldn't do, we don't act on it.
Something for the coming 10 years, I would say.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Those were the questions from me. And now let's go to the audience. Questions? Let's pass the microphone.
You say that people knowingly share their data with Facebook, but I think for a lot of people, they are not aware that they are sharing personal information with a company or just using a tool.
Well,
is that something we should create more awareness around? What your personal data on the internet, where it goes?
Yeah, so first of all, if you use a free tool, so I need to repeat the question, or was it okay? Fine. So I would say, first of all, if you use a free tool on the internet, you're the product. I think by now everybody knows that, because it has gone further. Even if you pay a product, take an Amazon Echo, or I mean, all those voice interfaces, you pay for the devices, and you're still the product. And so we're coming in this new world where I think that thanks to GDPR and the privacy discussion and the many data breaches, that people are getting to feel like, okay, sharing all this stuff, trusting that nothing will happen with it I didn't intend to, that's behind us. I think that anybody who has opened a newspaper or looked at a Google feed, a news feed, or whatever way you consume your news, you cannot say you didn't know. It's something we know, and so there is more education to be done. But it's not always about using the data that you share. It's, I think, the part that's probably under debated is the way you interact with all these interfaces is a data flow that is being used against you and for you, depending on which side of the equation you are. And so this part is definitely not understood enough. For the marketeers in the room and on the feed, it's like if you look at targeted audiences, custom audience segments, campaigns where companies upload their emails of their customers or prospects and then can do very detailed, cheap campaigns with high conversion rates or we've all been victims of retargeting where you were looking for a product, you bought it, and for a long amount of time you will get this product in your face when you say, how come the internet is so smart and so stupid at the same time that it doesn't know I already bought this? Why do I keep seeing these messages that somebody pays for? And so, but the way that you interact with those messages, as long as you haven't let the algorithm know I've bought these new shoes, I don't need to see the ad anymore, it will keep trying to sell you that pair of shoes. And so, yeah, so that's one part of it. The fact that the way that the other side of a certain website and all the trackers of those websites know what you have been looking and doing online is an extremely valuable data element. And the part that frightens me there is that the irony is that GDPR makes it much easier for the Facebooks and the Googles and those big tech companies to consolidate the silos they've built. Because you need reach and volume for that. And they've got this. And so they can make beautiful GDPR settings and make advertising campaigns about how you can set your privacy. But a small startup can no longer reach that critical threshold to get your hockey stick of user growth, because by now all the techniques, the growth hacking techniques that were used to reach many of those successes are no longer compliant with the law. And so, yeah, it's a bit of an ironic situation that we started this out of concern for privacy of a few big tech companies owning so much, and we're actually consolidating that situation. And even when they get caught red-handed, the fines they get are just, it's like, it's okay, we'll pay the fine as like 1 hour of revenues, move on. So yeah, that's the part we should, it keeps me awake, or well, not awake, but keeps me very concerned how we debate that and track all that. And I hope this side of talks can help to get that.
I think it's especially hard for us it's more obvious because we're in the scene, we're technical people, but you have to reach the masses and make them aware. So I don't know. It's a very hard question.
I think it's our role and then I'm talking to everybody in this room here who are part of the tech community at large, to tell people about this and to explain them, hey, you're showing me this ad that you like that much. Do you know why you like it that much? Because I should be careful because I have children and they watch the internet, they might discover this video, but I'm pretty convinced that if I would not have graduated my engineering studies if there would have been social media around. Because it's the human, my brain is too weak to overcome all those very smartly doctored nudges and patterns that's sucking your attention. And so, yeah, I really have to force myself to shut this down. And so when you're a student and you don't have these hard, or maybe not the self-discipline yet, or you have to, it would be like I would have been debating everything online all the time and following all the news in the world and being just like big. So I really feel that my brain wouldn't have fit for that sort of tools. And so, yeah, there's more and more. It's very interesting to see the evolution that the children of those high-tech CEOs of Silicon Valley, they go to schools where the phones are not allowed anymore. And like you get this new social divide where children in lower income class with less privileged backgrounds, they spend a lot of time just like, here's the babysitter. Like, watch a few hours of YouTube videos that just keep piling on top of each other. But it's doing, we haven't researched properly what the long-term effects are of watching so much crap. Okay. And I watched a lot of crap I can say that, but it was on television. It stopped at certain hours. This doesn't stop anymore. And it's catered to your beliefs, it influences you. So, yeah.
Next question.
Okay, I have a question from Vicky, a colleague from Argentina.
Okay.
She asks if you think if in the future more countries will adhere to the open data move, because in her country, in Argentina, the corruption dominates everything, and she thinks that having an open data mentality would create a big impact.
Yeah, so that's one of the basic promises of open data, is that it's good for transparency and thus accountability of those that are behind those government data. Yeah? If you can see where the government budget goes, you can detect frauds openly. And so that's definitely one of the values that we adhere to, where in Europe we're privileged because we have these checks and balances in place in still today a working democracy with several powers that are well regulated, and where open data is a new factor to keep those in power accountable. But not just those in power, you can use it for many other things, for the greater good. It's not just about being checks and balances when it comes to, because when we say open data, because initially the movement was about publicly owned, often government data, but it has gone much wider now. You have electricity companies that are opening up their windmill data. Okay, some part of that is greenwashing and open data washing, but other parts of it, like, wow, we're going for this new smart grid. If all the alternative energy suppliers start opening their data about how efficient their windmill is, and other people can make prediction models, and other users of energy can adapt to that. And so I truly believe that it's not something that should be looked at as only government. It should definitely be looked at like everybody creating data. And so we just discussed how much data we create, each of us, by wearing and giving input to these tracking devices. Yeah? You can share that too. Or you can say, I want to share data about my home with my neighbors, or my energy levels, or before and after insulating my home, I went from this much to that much. That could be useful information. This is how much it has cost me in Brussels to do this thing to my house, to go from one level to another. So that's also a way to share open data. One of the project I strongly believe in Brussels, which is about measuring air quality as citizens. When you do that in a network, in streets, you no longer need the government to get all those expensive, very precise measurement sensors. I do urge the government to keep doing that. But by having a few hundred of them, you can build models. And you can say, okay, we have these 10 official points at those spots. We take the threshold of the cheap ones around there, the cheap sensors, I mean, that are privately owned. It's like between 50 and 100 euro. You can build your own perfect and very reliable already particle sensor that sees how many fine dust is there in the air, and which like many environmental sensor data, capture that, share it, and because you have a few hundred of them, you can make a model that is really close to reality without having the very expensive. And then you can ship this all the way to Argentina and have air quality sensors over there. The point where, of course, a corrupt government has very little incentives to install an open data policy. Yeah? Because, if they're going to operate, it's going to be doctored data. And there's been studies afterwards. Well, we know that Greece has been in quite some difficult economic times. The numbers they gave to the European Statistics Office afterwards, and I should look up the link, but somebody looked at those data and you could see they were doctored. The state finances were doctored because the rounding up of the numbers was not scattered in a completely random way. It was the same. Because it was doctored, a human had been doctoring the numbers, and because it's a human, there was a certain bias pattern in there that was detectable. And so we didn't want to see what was building up there. Yeah? We wanted them in the European Union at all costs, and so we neglected these early signs. Although that from just a data science perspective, apparently it was possible to detect the anomalies in those data sets. And so, if you are a corrupt government doctoring the numbers, open data is not your first policy item on the list. But that's why we, as the privileged ones in Europe, should fight for this. And to show, listen, even over here it's a battle. And sometimes people are not taking it as serious, I think, as they should. Because I remember in the UK they had, and this was another open knowledge, UK project, which was open budget and open spending are two different projects. But so from all the municipalities, the local governments, they asked their budget and their actuals, and they made complete lists up to the named suppliers who is supplying toilet paper to this commune, to this city council. And so it was, they could see huge differences. Why is toilet paper so much more, and this is just one telling problem, because we can all relate to that, government, they have toilets and they need to buy toilet. But if you see these huge price differences, you can suspect that some suppliers must have delivered, I don't know how many layers of expensive, overpriced toilet paper. And it's with those small examples that speak to like, okay, is this the most efficient way of spending our local government money, that you can come to much more important issues, But then again, Brexit happened, There we are. Like, it's mind-boggling to, I think, anybody who tries to get their head around, like, how can a population vote against their own interest in such a massive way?
Okay. Do we have?
Yeah, we have another question from Andreas, our CEO. He asks how the PSD2 regulation will affect the banking world in the longer term.
So first of all, personal thanks to Andreas. I'm wearing your badge of honor, so the love goes both ways. But PSD2 is the Payment Service Directive 2. So this is a European legislation that will kick into effect September 2019, so almost tomorrow. And it's creating really interesting opportunities because it's opening up the banking industry. It means that trusted third parties can get, with consent of an end user, both B2B and consumers, they can get either payment initiation powers. So you could ask your customer, this is a hypothetical example, but you could say, we are now a trusted third party. When we send you the invoice, we get to pay it once you've approved in our project management tool that the task was successfully delivered and tested. So normal complicated cycles where you have to have an order form, a change request, an approval cycle, procurement coming back, like how come this is a different bank? No, like, so that's one part of the innovation that's going to happen. You can think about lots of cases where payment initiation will really change industries. I strongly believe it will have an impact on many industries to make it more easy to manage your data. The second one is what is called aggregation. Account aggregation is a huge one because it means, maybe show of hands, who has more than one bank account, more than one different bank? So for the camera, all the hands in this room have just gone up. Now,
100.
100 hands. So we have, the 50 people in the room. We're exaggerating a bit, but as you know, we're not too tough on data tonight, right? So
Doctoring the numbers.
Doctoring the numbers. I hope there's open data about the attendance tonight. But anyway, if you look at account aggregation for the many people like you in the room who have more than one account, if you want to know your financial situation now, you're going to have to open more than one app.
I think actually the KBC mobile app, you can already add accounts from different banks. Yeah. So I think that's partially because of the PSD2.
Again, it's a great example because 1 year ago I was sitting on panels about account aggregation, and the KBC stand of view was like, no, scraping should. And so the European Banking Association, they had an official stance backed by people. It was like, this should be forbidden. It's insecure. It's a man-in-the-middle attack. If somebody uses your login to scrape your bank data, this should be legally forbidden. And then they saw the opportunity. It's going to happen anyway under PSD2 in September next year. So they were being very pragmatic. Like, we're not going to wait to be scraped or copied.
They're very proactive.
We're going to be proactive, and we're going to be the first Belgian bank to add other banks. Of course, the other banks are not delighted about that, because they're like, hey, wait, we had this agreement together that we were not going to be facilitating this, and now you just change your position. You're scraping us, and you're giving our bank account details. You're consolidating them in the KBC app, and so I'm pretty sure they had some tough words about that internally. And the thing that changes today is very cumbersome to do that, because the Belgian banks have a tough way to authenticate. And you need to have a code. There is one for often for access for transactions. It's asked again, but the reason it's happening a lot abroad is that in the US you had Mint fairly early on. The US banks, they give you 2 access tokens: one for view to see balances and transactions, and one for transactions. And so you just give your view to a trusted third party, and they would consolidate your banking information. Whereas in Europe, we've had these very high security first, and the calculators, as we call them, with these these horrible devices that we're getting rid of. We have ITSME now, which is really a broadly supported initiative that is making authentication easier and growing. So that's a good thing. It's owned by the telcos and the banks, so it's purely Belgian. I like it because otherwise this was another thing that was just going to go to Google and Facebook. Yeah. They already have the authentication and multi-factor authentication, so they could just build that on top of it. So I like the fact that we do have some local access and authentication providers.
So in conclusion, the PSD2 is again making sure there's innovative changes in the banking.
Absolutely,
world.
And it's not. But the innovation will come, I think, from the combination of using this new legal opportunity of the banks having to open up. The banks themselves will not wait. We can see it happening already. They are all massively investing in tools to provide those services that they think will help them themselves. Yeah. Like you just gave the KBC example. Belfius is out there too, and all the rest is lined up to release those things. But don't forget, it's going to start only in September next year, and up to then, everybody adding this needs to get around how do I get the data out of the bank? And so there's only a few ways to do that. Yeah? As of September next year, you will give your consent to a third party and they can use it. So think about your accounting package getting that. A whole lot of transactions that are today manually transcribed by accountants, no more needs. Yeah? Or the combination of the account aggregation and the payment initiation. You go somewhere and they want to know, am I going to deliver this good to you? Pay me up front. No, now you can ask, what's your current balance? I'm going to give it to you and do the transaction. And I know it's going to be there. And then there's going to be models around those two things. What's the risk if you have the money now that it won't be there in 1 hour? Yeah? And on top of that, we have something called real-time payments, which are happening now. So you will not even have the time risk of checking a transaction, your available credit ratio, and then initiating it with the risk that something happened in between. It will be real time. But you won't need letters and you won't have to go to the bank. Could you please confirm I have enough money to buy this house? No, they will know it. And you will, when you go shopping for credit, so there's new questions about privacy there. Because you will not be obliged to give this. But if you willingly give this, you might get a better rate. So, okay, come to us for the best mortgage rate. In order to get it, I want your full history. Did you ever default on a payment? Are you paying for lunch with your friends? What type of goods are you buying? How frequently? Where do you shop? How much do you spend on other things? On travel, on clothing, on leisure, and so it's new dilemmas that will confront us again, and around the sensitivity of data. And so all the banks are also very cautious about creating marketplaces where your data will be resold. But they have this weird situation where a startup that can do account aggregation can offer you a service and an advantage on top of it, and then the bank holding back like, it's your data, you've given us consents, how far can we use it? To give you a very speaking example, banks in the past have been fined because they looked at where are you insured, and the Belgian banks are all bank insurers. They all have a side company or a related company that does insurance. And so in the past, they were never allowed to see, okay, you are a company at Bank A and you pay your car insurance at Bank B. So I'm going to send you a very targeted campaign because I know how much you pay. You know, this car insurance at our Bank A is 10% or 20%, or especially for you this month, 30% less expensive. Tomorrow, a startup C might come around and say, if you open up your payment and your insurance data, we're going to give you a better offer. Yeah? And so you have this really weird world where we're coming that banks who own the data, who have always held back both for legal reasons and for privacy reasons, are coming in this new marketplace where new contenders will do stuff with the data that they historically weren't allowed to do.
Okay. Cool.
So, Andreas, lots of opportunities out there, but again, keep the ethics in mind, because there's going to be... But I believe this will really transform the financial industry with lots of nice and good innovations ahead of us.
Okay, very cool. I think we can end it there. What is it?
Vicky also asks what you do outside of work.
From a leisure perspective, or I do have a family, and I spend too little time there. So it's one of the other things next to the focus that I'm not doing well enough, I would say. But on the side of that, I run a bit.
Snowboards.
well, when I go to the mountains that 1 week a year, yes, I do definitely. I'd like to get some of that this winter. But yeah, I have some hobbies. I play some guitar when I have the time and energy for it. But right now, it's a lot of work again. So that's my current phase. I hope to be back to writing guitar songs and spending more time with my family.
Okay, cool. Thanks for being here. I want to thank you. And
thank you all for the attention.
Very interesting.
Thanks for the techniques. Bye.
Wave to the people on the other
Bye,
end.
everybody. Hope you didn't have too many questions.